Agent Morris with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Did you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Sol Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of Anomaly Now, straight out of Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Smiles Lewis. This is the weekly live media news roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Scientific Anomaly Institute, aka the Anomaly Archives. Boy, I hope you were tuned in to the UAP hearing this morning. If not, we're going to briefly go over it. As some of you rightly can guess, I wasn't expecting that much in the way of brilliant new insights or anything like that, but it's always nice to hope, thinking maybe possibly there could be something new happening in the world of UAP, and I'll have some positive things to say. All right, well, jumping right in, of course, you can go to our website and find out more about us at anomalyarchives.org. We had posted there for folks who might have been interested in the hearing, links to the, of course, official GOP oversight event page, the press release, the video link for the GOP stream, as well as some live stream watching parties that were being done by YouTubers such as Christina Gomez, Martin Willis, Ryan Sprague, Richard Dolan, and of course groups like the Society for UAP Studies. I'm always curious to see how these things are mass consumed. In other words, how many people might have tuned in live. Of course, there were some other big things happening today at about the same time. So there was some competition for people's eyeballs. But I'll get to that in just a little bit. And of course, over at the website, these links will take you to archives of those watch parties, including the original raw stream from the GOP oversight page, as well as the documents hosted, thankfully, by John Greenwald Jr. over at theblackvault.com. Links to Tim Gallaudet, Louis Elizondo, Michael Gold, and Michael Schellenberger's witness statements and new documents. A new document was entered into the record specific to Michael Schellenberger's testimony that will be of interest to some. And so let's, before I dive in, I just want to say, this past weekend we had a wonderful time tabling, doing some outreach at the first annual Unhalloweens event put on by our good friend Wizard Saul Ravencraft at the new Nature's Treasures Event Center that's up north Austin. And it's the first time I've seen the space. Love this new space. I think a lot of great fun things are going to be happening there in the near future. And it was a great time. a soft rollout of this new, I think, ongoing event. It may not just be annual; it may end up being multiple times a year. We'll see what Saul has in mind. But this was this Saturday, November 9th, there at Nature's Treasures Event Center, and we were happy to be one of the vendors there, tabling and talking to the public and getting to know folks from around Austin and outside of Austin. A lot of people came from various parts across the city and parts beyond, including some folks from San Antonio that were some of the vendors, as well as friends and family who were from around the state. But this was a great time. Really want to thank all the vendors. Of course, totally want to thank Nature's Treasures for hosting this event, and Saul Ravencraft for hosting and putting it all together. It was a great time. I was glad to be interviewed by Saul. Thought it was a really good discussion, some good questions back and forth with the audience. And there's some other good interactions that Saul did in front of the audience with other vendors. And I believe all of this was recorded. So hopefully soon these recordings will be made available online and you can check that out. One of the other people interviewed was horror film composer Mark Wilson, who really, I thought, gave some great insights into the process and his creativity with regard to soundtrack design and music production and that sort of thing. Well, right. So let's just dive right in. Of course, you can go to the old Flipboard, flipboard.com/@Anomaly Archives. And there's a link there that'll take you over to our, I'm going to have to reestablish audio connection later. Never mind. Anyway, so lots of great news articles and links to materials that we'll be talking about, mostly related to this UAP hearing. But some other interesting things that you might want to check out that I'm not going to dive into here, but Avi Loeb has a new article commissioning data on 500,000 objects in the sky from the Galileo Project Observatory. This goes into some detail about the equipment that they've installed and I guess their approach that they're going to be doing. So among the things that wonderful people met and wonderful things found or obtained or donated at this Unhalloween. I'm really excited to dive into this work here. Visitors from the Red Star by August Smith. Got to meet August at this event. He was there with a good friend who they are good friends with another good friend of mine, documentarian Brad Abrahams, and Brad's, I believe, up in Canada, but they came by. That was great to meet them. And August is a poet, and this is a book of poetry called Visitors from the Red Star. I love this cover art. This is awesome. I forget who did the cover art. Chris Harnon. And it's about 90 plus pages of mostly poetry with one or two essays and a nice kind of bibliography. Obviously it's a thin little work, but very inspiring. And I dove right into it and have been thoroughly enjoying it and look forward to talking to August more about this in the future. We'll provide a link. I believe, actually, did I open that up? Yes, I think I did. Yes, here we go. Over at augustsmith.net, you can find out more about him, including links to how to buy that poem book of poetry, as well as hear some interviews with him. Enjoyed this one over at the Line Break podcast, episode 63. So check that out. Also at this event, we got to meet this fellow here who has the Fantastic Magic Center. That's fantasticmagiccenter.com, and who does his own podcast. Really looking forward to checking out his museum of magical materials. It was a great time getting to know him. And yeah, so diving right back into the news links. Another episode of the Telepathy Tapes has dropped. That podcast is continuing. I think they've got one more episode to go, perhaps. And then, of course, hopefully they'll get everything together to put out the real audio video documentary. But thetelepathytapes.com will take you to all the podcast episodes. But I also really enjoyed this Liminal Frames podcast episode, Telepathy and Mind at Large. Great discussion about this podcast and how moving it is. And I'm still just really flabbergasted at how awesome this bit is, and this research and this area of exploration. And so, in a nutshell, it involves the idea that non-vocal autistic people are exhibiting psychic ability, telepathy, and beyond. And it's very controversial because of past scandals involving a technique called facilitated communication. There are definitely some possible traditional disappointing explanations for this. I'm holding out hope that it will stand up to even more rigorous attention, and highly recommend it. Even if it turns out to all be wrong, I think it's worth your time. It's a very powerful story. So check that out. All right. Some other great articles that we're not going to get into, but I highly recommend over at the debrief.org. U.S. advocates urge White House support for RISE initiative to keep U.S. ahead in edge science. The person pictured there is Julia Mossbridge. She is phenomenal. I really think she is a great speaker on the need for a powerful realignment in the world of science, and she and others are advocating for more advanced frontier research, science research, to help keep the United States ahead of the game in world affairs. Meanwhile, this other older article from last year, The Reluctant Levitator, Teresa of Avila's Humble Raptures, over at publicdomainreview.org. There's this article about more civilian evidence of these UFO swarms around Area 51 and other military bases. Not as exciting information as I was expecting, but hey, there you go. Very interesting video that's an old flashback to an earlier episode of Thinking Aloud with Jeffrey Mishlove, exploring hyperspace part 1 with Saul Paul Sarag. Sarag being one of the counterculture physics guys from back in the 70s. Meanwhile, over at liberationtimes.com, CIA and DoD engaged in decades-long retrieval, tracking, and exploitation of UFOs, including Italian Magenta craft, sources reveal. I'm still very skeptical of this, but I think there's some good reporting going on there by Christopher Sharp. Over at defensescoop.com, former naval commander agrees to testify with others at upcoming UAP hearing. Well, we'll hear about that in just a second. So, meanwhile, more cryptozoology. Fishermen make rare catch, a doomsday fish, but with a seahorse head. This looks exactly like the kind of sea serpent, sea monster depictions you've probably seen that in many books on cryptozoological water creatures. It's kind of cropped out in this picture, but the head of this thing looks like a horse, which is not typical for a quote unquote doomsday fish. So they're positing that it's a mutation. Make of that what you will. Anyway, let's just dive right in. There's over at the oversight.house.gov is the official event page for today's hearing, the UAP hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena, exposing the truth. This was held at 11:30 a.m. Central Standard Time in the 2154 Rayburn House office building as part of the Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Government Innovation, National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs committees or subcommittees. And as we had reported, the guests are going to be Dr. Tim Gaudet, Rear Admiral, U.S. Navy retired, and Chief Executive Officer of Ocean STL Consulting LLC. Lou Elizondo, of course, author and former Department of Defense official, head of something, the predecessor to the UAP task force, allegedly. And then Mike Gold, former NASA Associate Administrator of Space Policy and Partnerships, a member of NASA UAP Independent Study Team. And, that's what I forgot to bring up. And Michael Schellenberger, founder of the journalism outfit Public. So, I don't know. I was very skeptical of whether this would move the needle, advance the discussion, that sort of thing. Really not sure if it did or not. For me, it did not. Of course, like I mentioned, all those documents are available over at theblackvault.com. John Greenwald has this page there for all the information that's come out about that, just mainly just links to those very documents that I was talking about, the PDFs of these witness testimony, all of which were read by the witnesses. They just more or less read their witness statements, got them on the record, which of course I guess they were on the record by virtue of being submitted in this pre-existing PDF document format. But apparently at the last minute, Michael Schellenberger also put in to the record a 11 or 12 page report on Immaculate Constellation, this alleged still secret database that somehow is an across the network kind of data archiving tool with all kinds of sightings and evidence. So, gosh, what to say about all of this? It really, for me, comes down to they all are more or less, some more than others, arguing for greater transparency, which of course has been a large part of the attempts at getting some kind of UAP, UFO exposing, disclosuring, put into law, making all this stuff more available and above board, trying to bring to heel any of these supposed secret programs that are allegedly out of control. If you're playing the drinking game at home, the word is allegedly, because there's going to be a lot of allegedly. So, but when you talk about witnesses, what are these people witnesses to? What are they witnessing in a religious sense, so to speak, to the members of Congress and the public at large? Tim Gallaudet, his main witnessing is the disappearing email associated with the Go Fast video from the January 2015 incident, whereby he says he received an email asking whether anybody knew what these objects were that were being seen so frequently and interfering with this training exercise that needed to be completed on a tight schedule, presumably so that these military Navy contingents could go about their actual operations. And he says that basically he saw this, it alarmed him. He saw no one respond to it, but then the next day when he went back to look at the email again, it had been deleted, not by him. And he implies, or maybe he states explicitly, that this disappearing email was corroborated by others who have been seen and vanished. In other words, there seems to be a cover-up of this. And one of the things he says in his statement, I concluded that the UAP information must have been classified within a special access program managed by an intelligence agency, a compartmented program that even senior officials, including myself, were not read into. Last year's UAP hearing, citation 9, before this oversight committee confirmed that UAP-related information is not only being withheld, citation 10, from senior officials and members of Congress, but elements of the government are engaging in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks, citation 11, designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Now, that's quite an allegation, but this person, like so many who've been coming forward, seems to have an unimpeachable reputation, and presumably those citations give links to the evidence for these claims. Of course, most of this may just reference back to the testimony and evidence presented by David Grush or Lou Elizondo, who, of course, himself talks about being targeted. So, again, what is Tim Gallaudet a witness of? And I'm not trying to impugn his reputation, or I certainly respect him and all of these people for being there and being heroes of a sort for risking ridicule and trying to advance this important subject, even as I have grave reservations about what's really going on with regard to this new wave of UFO UAP activity post 2017. Other quotes from Gallaudet's presentation and or questioning later, he says, it highlighted a dangerous culture of overclassification. There we go again, citation 12, where even pressing safety of flight issues could be swept aside under the pretense of secrecy. He goes on to say, finally, and perhaps the most important reason, the failure of the executive branch to share UAP information with Congress is an infringement, citation 28, on the legislative branch that undermines separation of powers and may be creating a constitutional crisis. He also says, while I was preparing for this hearing, former DOD official Chris Mellon contacted me to seek my assistance in sharing with Congress the details of a case involving satellite imagery of UAP from 2017 that has still not been shared with Congress. He has also brought the specifics to the attention of AARO and says he is confident the new director of AARO will honor requests for access by the oversight committees. Citation 29. Now, I also put that in there because I wanted to note the absence of Chris Mellon. Chris Mellon obviously has been part of that entourage that came to the fore 2017 before the New York Times revelations with the launch of Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy, at which Lou Elizondo went public with his having quit out of frustration, his military job, and the establishment's refusal to look at what he felt was a very important security threat, per his story. Chris Mellon is one of the many insiders. I mean, if you don't know anything about Chris Mellon, just look him up. He has a very strong background in former administrations at a high level. And of course, the Mellon Family Foundation is known by many as those things you hear at the end of funded by kind of stories or productions. Now, in the questioning part, in one of his responses, I forget the exact question, but he basically talked about, and I think this actually is in his statement, his being subjected to what he described as an hours-long influence operation, quote unquote, an attempt by AARO staff to convince him of the validity of their historic report findings and their debunking of all of this nonsense. And I think that's pretty telling that he's actually accusing them of having tried to basically brainwash him or push propaganda on him and change his mind about his strong feeling. And he was one of the ones that most strongly came out with the angle that this does represent non-human intelligence, NHI, that this does not appear likely to be a foreign adversary technologies. That's pretty significant for him. But then, you know, again, not trying to say he's just in it for the money, but he's one of these new batch of former military career, government career intelligence people who have moved into the realm of NGOs and associated with UFOs, and that's big business now. And that's not to criticize. I mean, I certainly think there's plenty of capitalist opportunities for the farming, so to speak, of the technologies and information relevant to the nature of this weird unknown phenomena and all the weird unknown phenomena that circle around it, that orbit it. All right, so Lou Elizondo, yeah, gosh, he just sounded like a broken record. So many references to can't say this in public, will say that, talk about this behind closed doors, have talked about this in skiffs, have given the evidence, went through, a year of review before I could get my book published. I signed a document that says 3 years ago that says I can't talk about this, this, or this. Continually offering to speak to the government officials there, asking these questions, holding this hearing to give information in private sessions. I understand that, but it gets old really quick, and it kind of just begs the question of, like, why are you so much more tied up in that way than these other people? Now, okay, well, because he was supposedly the head of this program, but again, given everything he's supposed to have been involved with, why can't he do more? I'm okay. I've said that so many times. I'll just stop. In his statement, here's some quotes from that. In my last position, I managed a special access program on behalf of the White House and the National Security Council. Period. Over the last decade and a half, I learned that certain UAP programs were and are operating without any of these limits. What are these limits? A watchful Congress, a responsive executive branch, and an informed public. He talked about unwarranted criminal investigations, harassment, and efforts to destroy one's credibility. He's one who has alleged that he's been hounded both internally and externally by people that he believes are part of a disinformation campaign. And you hear this a lot from his advocates, his believers, his followers. And he says, I have provided classified testimony to both the Department of Defense and the intelligence community inspector general. Many of us have substantially been targeted by this cabal with threats to our careers, our security clearances, and even our lives. He gives 3 main suggestions for moving forward. What were those? So under the written testimony of Luis Elizondo, let's see if I can find those 3. They're down here. Yes, here we go. To fix these problems, I propose 3 principal actions. First, Congress and the president should create a single point of contact responsible for a whole of government approach to the UAP issue. Currently, the White House, CIA, NASA, the Pentagon, Department of Energy, and others play a role, but no one seems to be in charge, leading to unchecked power and corruption. Second, we need a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency and help restore the American public's trust at a time when the public's trust is at an all-time low. This strategy should include a whole of government approach, including the academic and scientific communities, the private sector, and our international partners and allies. And then third, Congress should create a protected environment so whistleblowers desperate to do the right thing can come forward without fear. As it currently stands, these whistleblowers suffer because of stigma, a code of silence, and concerns about retaliation. These whistleblowers should be encouraged to come forward in ways that protect them against any forms of retaliation. Policies and procedures should ensure that protection. And for those who refuse to cooperate, it is up to the members of this committee and other lawmakers to wield their subpoena power against hostile witnesses and prevent additional government funding to those UAP efforts that remain hidden from congressional oversight. So, okay, that all mostly sounds reasonable. What more did he offer or bring to the table? I'm not sure. It wasn't that long of a hearing. It started about 11:40 instead of 11:30, and I forget, it ran, till about 1:30 maybe. I forget exactly, Central Standard Time. But yeah, I was going to also comment. Maybe I'll go back to that. So, then we had Mike Gold. He's the least known to most people. The links that I forgot to bring up, an acquaintance online, Shepard Johnson, posted to his YouTube channel, I think back in 2011, shortly after he recorded this footage. It's just some very brief interview footage of Mike Gold at an event, like an aviation or space engineering event. And he's asked by Shepard about UFOs, and he's kind of I knew this was coming, and is asked about certain division of Bob Bigelow's organization. He kind of is like, no, that's not my area, but he then gives a good scientist's reaction to the subject of UFOs, and seems willing to talk about it at least briefly. These are very short clips. I will include them in the show notes. But I forgot to bring them up to right now. But honestly, I didn't feel that Mike Gold brought that much to the table. He certainly isn't a witness, other than he has had connection to UAP projects through his day jobs, which are listed here in this document. I would be remiss if I also didn't thank the sponsors of the NASA UAP Independent Study Team, IST. Let's see. But basically, he was specifically talking about the stigma and giving a good positive spin on what I think is always bears repeating. And that is that, where did I put those notes? Speaking out for science. And I think he even used that phrase, that he is there to speak out for science and science's need to address these things. The conclusion of his witness testimony is titled "The Value of Anomalies to Science and Public Engagement." And he's basically just saying what I and so many others have said for so long, that this is the stuff that science is all about. This is the stuff that should challenge people's imaginations and their sense of wonder and their desire to try to understand, and that it should not be hindered by over classification and government secrecy and national security. All of these people agree that, of course, there are things that can't be revealed due to national security, but time and time again, it was, and Michael Schellenberger did the best job of showing and citing John Greenwald Jr., the person that's been doing the most FOIA work on this, that far from seeing greater transparency and greater disclosure, it is the opposite. So there's something else I wanted to mention that Gold said, and this, I'm confused about this. He talks about, remember when NASA, I think, announced their team, and they wouldn't announce the head of the team, and it was said that they were afraid that that person would get threats and or had been threatened. And then like, I think this gets muddled with Sean Kirkpatrick's claims as well in my head, and maybe I'm the one that's muddled about this, quite likely. But Michael Gold talks about NASA personnel being mocked and threatened, those people that were part of this new UAP NASA team. And I'm like, for investigating UFOs, and I thought the narrative was that the UFO believers were the ones attacking them for being skeptics, not other scientists attacking them for, why would you agree to be on a UAP task force? So again, I that kind of stigma certainly is there, but I always thought that was more an allegation against UFO believers. Whatever. Anyway, so Michael Schellenberger gave his testimony. He read his statement. I had planned on playing a clip of this. So starting around the page 7, going on to page 8, of him just reading this part here. starting when he's talking about the Immaculate Constellation database, but I'm going to have to, and then of course this document, the Immaculate Constellation document, that I'm not sure if this was, it seems like this may have been written by his contact, his source, one of his sources, and this is over at mace.house.gov/Immaculate Constellation, all one word, no spaces. And they've scanned the document and uploaded it. It's 11 pages. But I'm going to have to, hold on, y'all. I'm going to have to stop screen sharing and go back to this. So I just wanted to play this one little bit of him reading from that bit there, and we'll see if this works.
Immaculate Constellation includes high-quality imagery intelligence and measurement and signature intelligence of UAPs, the whistleblower's report adds. The sources of this intelligence are a blend of directed and incidental collection capacities, capabilities, positioned in low Earth orbit, the upper atmosphere, as well as military and civilian aviation altitudes and maritime environments. The report to Congress details in detail various UAPs, including spheres, orbs, disks, saucers, ovals, triangles, boomerang, arrowhead, and irregular organic. The report describes various incidents found in the human intelligence databases. One involved orbs surrounding and forcing an F-22 out of its patrol area. In another incident, the crew of a Navy aircraft carrier watched a small orange-red sphere rapidly descend from a high altitude of 100 to 200 yards directly above the flight deck of the CVN, or aircraft carrier. And since my reporting on this Immaculate Constellation last month, another source came forward who told me that they saw a roughly 13-minute-long, high-definition, full-color video of a white orb UAP coming out of the ocean approximately 20 miles off the coast of Kuwait. It was filmed from a helicopter. Then halfway through the video, the person said the orb is joined by another orb that briefly comes into the frame from the left before rapidly moving again out of the frame. The person discovered the video on SIPR, the Secure Internet Protocol Router Network, which the DoD uses to transmit classified information. A leading UAP researcher who utilizes the Freedom of Information Act to find out what the government knows, John Greenwald, told me last year that the U.S. government had been increasingly denying his request for UAP information. He has been doing FOIA requests for 27 years and has an archive of 3 million pages. The government has for decades denied any interest in UFOs, he told me, but the documents that he has assembled show that behind the scenes, it was a completely different story. Contrary to the hopes of many advocates of transparency, the government has been restricting more information since the leak of 3 UAP videos in 2017. The DoD organization AARO has been labeling many documents with a B7 exemption, which Greenwald says does not make any sense. They're stating that anything AARO does is involved in law enforcement investigation, which allows AARO to not release it.
Okay. So, yeah, so you can go and you can read this Immaculate Constellation document that I guess he was saying that this was written by one of the multiple whistleblowers. Now, I'm not claiming that this is a real document. It is part of the UFO experience as a researcher. If you go down this rabbit hole, is contending with possibly fake documents. It is a fact that all intelligence agencies manufacture fake documents, create false programs, all to discourage, dissuade, to send people down dead ends, or to ferret out moles by seeing who transmits and seems interested in these different bits of information. Now, I don't know what's going on here. So one of the things, so here's again, how is Schellenberger a witness? No offense to Mr. Schellenberger. I'm actually a fan of his reporting. I think he's a good journalist. I think he's very challenging to my ideas constantly with the different areas of research that he's been in. He characterizes himself as a left-leaning journalist, environmentalist who has since really shifted his views on liberalism and Democratic policies, especially with regard to the drug war and homelessness and the environment and nuclear energy. And so he's become a very controversial lightning rod, I probably for a lot of half the country. But he has also started delving into a year ago this UFO stuff. Now, I don't know how long before that, but it seems like he's very much a newcomer to this. But I think he's doing a good job so far, and I want to trust his instincts that he has done his due diligence in terms of triangulating the probability that this is real based on getting multiple reports of this alleged database, allegedly, Immaculate Constellation. Now, again, this could just be a ruse created by the very intelligence agencies that are at the heart of so much UFO shenanigans. But I'm glad to see that he's released this, that it serves as some kind of accompaniment to the reportage that he has done on this particular aspect of UFO, UAP claims of whistleblowers. But again, so I guess his testimony as a witness is on behalf of these alleged whistleblowers. I guess that counts. But you decide. But as he was describing, there are a number of instances, UFO cases, that you can look at in this document and try to find any other information on them. Start cyber sleuthing, folks. See if we can find the source or any other corroborating information on any of these cases. None of these immediately jumped out at me, though there is mention of a Tic Tac, but I think it's a different incident than they're talking about. There you go. What else beyond that? Oh, I'm not sorry. I meant to show. Yeah, so I was trying to show. So there's in section 2 of the Immaculate Constellation report that he's referring to, USG Imagery Intelligence, where there are these descriptions of different. This one is not OCR'd, so I don't think you can't highlight or search it. Somebody OCR this document quickly. And then there's also some HUMINT examples of some close encounters, also descriptions of the different types and performance aspects. But so I don't know what more I want to say about this. Why is this not working? There we go. As far as the hearing goes, I think it went over fine. Honestly, I don't feel like there was near as much useful back and forth between the hearing organizers and these witnesses. I did want to. Yeah, okay. So there are some other things I did want to comment on. So in Schellenberger's comments about in his reporting on these alleged whistleblowers and this alleged Immaculate Constellation, there's this phrase ARV, alien reproduction vehicle, which confuses a lot of folks who haven't been around a long time. And I had to remind myself where I first heard. I kept thinking it was Bob Lazar that first brought that term to prominence, but this poster at Reddit, Bobux 1980, wrote this post. Bob Lazar distracts from the alien reproduction vehicle. The story of the ARV starts with Brad Sorensen in November 1988 when he went to Norton Air Force Base for an air show with a client who was a politician who served in the Defense Department, rumored to be Frank Carlucci. There he went to a VIP-only hangar where the politician was recognized and passed Sorensen off as an aide, and were both admitted. There, Sorensen saw the alien reproduction vehicle, a craft that hovered slightly off the floor with flat parallel plate capacitors on the bottom of the craft, a flywheel that rotated at high speed directly underneath the passenger seats, and a 16-inch by 16-inch by 20-foot diameter anti-parallel electromagnetic coil around the circumference of the craft, Sorensen quickly told Aerospace Illustrator friend Mark McCandlish, that's McCandlish, Mark McCandlish, about the ARV, who proceeded to draw a schematic from Sorensen's description. It is my supposition that Bob Lazar's radio, TV, and print interviews, which started in March to May 1989, were a psyop by the military who were trying to contain the Sorensen leak by flooding the media with tales of the UFO Lazar worked on, dubbed, quote unquote, the sports model. They have a link here. I have not. Oh, this is to a document at research. Oh, yes. This is the classic image associated with that. You're not seeing it. Let me share that. Figure 11 uploaded by yada, yada, yada. So, yeah, that's so the ARV inclusion in Schellenberger's alleged whistleblower testimony is interesting, but that's just a side note there for you. But the only interviewer I wanted to comment on was Ms. Bobert, Boebert. I think she's a fairly controversial figure. She certainly opened with a bunch of silliness, but she only asked Schellenberger questions. She didn't ask anybody else on the panel questions, and either she was confused about who Schellenberger is, which seems unlikely. It seems, given her political bent, that she was probably choosing him as the only person she trusted to say honestly answers to her questions. But most of her questions centered around oceanic, marine, aquatic questions, USOs, unidentified submarine objects, submerged objects. That was the focus of her questions, and most of it he couldn't answer. And I kept expecting him to say, "Ma'am, were you perhaps wishing to ask these questions of former Rear Admiral of the Navy, Tim Gaudet? Did you mistake me for the former military Navy guy?" I don't think so. But that's really what it felt like. It was so weird. Anyway, but then she just seemed a little odd. Finally, I did want to comment on, so how widespread was this as far as viewership? So this is not a scientific study. So the main link, that main YouTube link for the stream for this event, at the height, I saw a maximum of about approximately 38,000. Let me merge that. 38,000 simultaneous viewers. When I checked back after it had ended and was now getting heightened by, I guess, total numbers of people that have then watched it, as opposed to simultaneous viewings. So I ordered these in high to low as far as live at the time. So highest, of course, would be the original stream. One would presume 38,000 simultaneous viewers. These numbers are good, not scientific. By 2:40 p.m. this afternoon, it was up to 115,000 viewers. The Associated Press had 26,000 simultaneous viewers, but by this time, 2:40 had more than the main GOP with 117,000. News Nation, the UFO UAP oriented news outlet that I had never even heard of before they got the Dave Grush story a year ago, 21,000 simultaneous viewers at the height, 90,000 by 2:40 p.m. A YouTube channel I'd never heard of before, Video from Space, got 11,000 simultaneous. USA Today, 9.6 thousand simultaneous with a 2:40 p.m. total count of 37,000. Richard Dolan. So among the 5 or 6 live stream watch parties by UFO or interested persons. Richard Dolan got the highest number that I could tell, with 6.8 thousand simultaneous and 19,000 total views by 2:40 p.m. Another website I was not familiar with. Well, I guess I'd seen them before. World Cam got 6.7 thousand simultaneous views. The Hill got 6,000 simultaneous views. That's that newish news site, so that's right there, man. So Richard Dolan had almost 1,000 more simultaneous viewers than The Hill, a mainstream alternative, I don't know, news site, but they did get 30,000 by 2:40 p.m., which is more than Dolan. Now, the New York Post, who of course have Stephen Greenstreet, who's one of their debunking characters. I'll come back to him in a second, but I swear I saw 5.8 thousand simultaneous viewers, which then dropped suddenly shortly after 12 noon, I think, to 2.5 thousand for most of the rest of the viewing. But now at 2:40 p.m. was showing 20,000 total views. Similarly, apparently there are two different Fox 5 Washington, D.C. YouTube channels. One was showing almost 4,000 simultaneously, which then precipitously dropped to 416. Maybe I misperceived and missed the actual, misquoted that 3.9 thousand. But they were showing 34,000 total views by 2:40 p.m. Central Standard Time. And another channel of theirs was showing 2,000 views. Global News, 3.5 thousand up to 19,000. Anyway, the rest were all under 3,000. This Christian Harloff, two different channels of his, garnered probably a total of 5 or 6,000 simultaneous viewers. Live Now from Fox, 2.7 thousand. Launchpad, 2.2 thousand. Christina Gomez got almost as many as Sky News with 1.6 thousand, and by 2:40 p.m. 6,400. Anyway, I just found all that interesting. Reuters and down there with 360. Austin's own American Statesman, I saw max out at 515 live simultaneous, but with up to 3,000 total views by 2:40 p.m. Anyway, what does that mean? Nothing. Just getting that on the record. Okay, back to what I was starting to say. I've mentioned this site before. Tanner Boyle, tannerfboyle.substack.com, his Getting Spooked podcast and blog. Highly recommend it. He, a year ago, connected to the Dave Grush whistleblowing, put out his UFO manifesto, thoughts on the perpetual UFO psyop and scam. So he's one of the few people really, I think, doing a good job on looking at the UFO phenomenon, much the way I have for a long time, and that is incorporating a parapolitical view, looking at UFOs through a parapolitical lens. His manifesto from June 11th of 2023, his manifesto part 1, highly recommend. I thought there was something, he just kind of gives an overview of where he's coming from and why, all the kinds of things that you've heard me talk about before. But he has done another one called Manifesto UFO 2, the deficiency in skepticism and continued thoughts on the state of ufology. Again, highly recommend both of these. But there was part I wanted to read here. He starts by saying, following a federal election that included a lot of punching leftwards in an apparent attempt to avoid accountability, ufology's place as a smaller node in a broader culture war became more apparent. The personal political leanings of UFO UAP advocates can range broadly, but previous articles have noted a distinct far-right contingent that gets welcomed alongside more moderate and traditional conservatives and liberals. These dimensions also exist within the skeptic community. However, the broad ideological differences between them get shaken off to certify that the collective attitudes towards the UFO issue has little variation. Too many within the skeptic community, the existence of UFOs To many within the skeptic community, the existence of UFOs is being exaggerated by certain factions inside and outside the U.S. military establishment, all to distract from lapses in national security or to erode its foundations. UFOs are explicitly to the detriment of the United States DoD apparatus in this reading. While acknowledging that certain bad seed military figures are responsible for the perpetuation of the UFO mythos throughout popular culture and fringe subcultures, the defense establishment is seen as a net positive. Further, skeptics want the good eggs within this establishment to clamp down on those bad seeds who threaten American domination. To illustrate how this brand of skepticism functions, one that does not always question but often advocates for military action, I present profiles from a couple of figures within the UFO skeptical community, Skeptic A and Skeptic B. These two examples are real people, but I feel the blind item format serves the purposes of the argument better without slinging mud unnecessarily. Now, I'm just going to say right out the bat, I believe that Skeptic A is Stephen Greenstreet of the New York Post, who has done a lot of, I don't want to say hit pieces, but negative articles and videos about Skinwalker Ranch and all those associated with Grush and the claims of crash retrieval programs. That includes Hal Puthoff, Lou Elizondo, the whole gamut of the 27 on team of disclosure advocates. And I feel confident in that because I'll just read this. Skeptic A works for a large multimedia news company with a conservative slant. New York Post. They create impressive debunks of UFO events and personalities with a not insubstantial amount of focus placed upon the networks at play. They consistently engage with or promote other pieces of media from their employer, often content with a marked right-wing agenda. While criticizing one camp of UFO believers for wasting taxpayer money, Skeptic A nevertheless collaborates with prominent UFO personalities in other venues. Specifically, Stephen Greenstreet does a show called The Basement Tapes or From the Basement or something with Nick Pope, the alleged former UFO desk for the British MOD, Ministry of Defense, who himself could be the focus of Greenstreet's ire if he chose to do that for all the reasons that others criticize Nick Pope. Let's see. Yes. Skeptic A nevertheless collaborates with prominent UFO personalities in other venues. Well, that other video is a New York Post video series. This scenario indicates that to a certain degree, the money of private individuals is okay to squander on ufology books, videos, or conferences, only being an issue when it is part of the federal budget. If one is to browse stray comments from Skeptic A, they will see that their position is that UFOs are drones or other military equipment from foreign adversaries encroaching in American airspace, as opposed to ineffective UFO research. Skeptic A would rather this taxpayer money go elsewhere in the American war machine to take on the aerial phenomena of foreign origin. As a former employee of a major foreign policy wing of the U.S. government, they rarely question the traditional conservative side of the U.S. military when it comes to any subject aside from UFOs. For example, they have contended that Chinese spying operations in America are overrunning the country, propped up by devious third worlders. As for those pesky flying saucers, Skeptic A seemingly believes they are a distraction from the real, encroaching enemy that needs to be summarily dealt with. While advocating for a powerful American military, they question frivolous uses of funding and anything perceived as woke or non-traditional within the ranks, splitting hairs on a dog that bites. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is not, in fact, intending Skeptic A as Stephen Greenstreet, but that's who I immediately thought of. Skeptic B crops up in various mainstream media less than Skeptic A. Actually, I'm wondering if I've got this backwards and he thinks, I don't know, I'm probably wrong on both. Skeptic B crops up in the mainstream media less than Skeptic A. Right there, I'm like, well, this person I'm thinking of, Mick West, is who I think he's saying for Skeptic B. I think he crops up a lot more than Stephen Greenstreet. I think most people don't even know who Stephen Greenstreet is, whereas Mick West, they do. But maybe I'm got these backwards, or maybe it's neither of these. They are also a journalist, but have a decidedly more classical liberal bent, often verging on centrism. Their work is published in a variety of places, but their social media presence is integral to their overall reach. He's got his own website and crowdsources debunks effectively. Their work is subsidized by a think tank, which in turn receives its funding from a broad swath of charitable foundations and philanthropic groups, all headed by some of America's richest families and individuals. While a conspiracist would deem these elite organizations the Illuminati or some other cabal, a more grounded observer would nevertheless recognize that these groups are not offering truly unconditional funding. Setting aside the fact that these charities are used to evade taxes, the inherent issues of gifts or donations from wealthy figures and business scions are many. The recipients tend to never criticize or examine the desires of their benefactors, nor do they acknowledge their benefactors' ultimate goals of maintaining and growing their wealth. Indeed, many think tanks funded by this money are unlikely to hire anyone who questions too much of the status quo, not wanting to upset their revenue stream. As such, despite being part of an alternative political persuasion to that of Skeptic A, Skeptic B similarly advocates for military power, although in a gentler interventionist manner. In practice, this interventionism is rarely gentle. Anyway, that goes on for a bit. Maybe I'm probably wrong. Maybe it's neither Mick West or Stephen Creedstreet, but highly recommend Tanner's blog, Tanner F. Boyle at tannerfboyle.substack.com, or just search for Getting Spooked, and you can find more about his great articles there, which have a variety of threads. He's done a lot of really good work, and he does some audio podcasts as well. Gosh, it's getting late. And I've already read too much. Oh, I guess I will skip reading. I've continued reading Jacques Vallée's Forbidden Science, Volume 5, and it's been a while since I was reading it, and there came across some interesting things that aren't relevant to any of this, but so I'll save it for another time. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate it, folks. I hope you found some of this information useful, and do the usual, like and subscribe. We could really use your help. Oh, so we've got coming up, you can go to our patreon.com/Anomaly Archives and find out more about this weekend's presentation. Our patrons at the Anomaly Academy Cadet tier, that's $10 a month or more, have access to our live monthly online lectures. And this month we are having a presentation this Saturday, November 16th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time by Joe Green, a theoretical approach to conspiratorial thinking. Joe is a fantastic guy and has been researching parapolitics for a long time, and I think you'll appreciate what he has to say. So if you're at all interested, please consider becoming a member. Even if you're just interested in his lecture, you can sign up and have access to his and the previous lectures, and then you could unsubscribe. Hey, but we know you want to continue supporting the Anomaly Archives, so please consider becoming a patron of our organization. We need your help, and we can't do this without you. That's why I'm so thankful for all the volunteers who helped make this on Halloween event of Saul Ravencraft's this past weekend at Nature's Treasures such a positive, fun event. Really loved interacting with the people that at the event, and the vendors, and of course the Nature's Treasure staff. We rolled out these wonderful new stickers that Victor, one of our volunteers, created. They really did exactly what they were intended, which was get a dialogue happening between us and the attendees, and have the attendees tell us their amazingly wild, cool, weird stories. So you'll be hearing and seeing more about those stickers, I'm sure. And we recently launched our TikTok channel. You can find some book talk videos there. So that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you so much, everybody. We love you, and have a wonderful, safe week. We'll be back a week from now. Good night.